Hey guys, welcome back to another CXC revision video. I'm your host, Ms. Kim. So today we'll be reviewing part 2 of the May-June 2020 CXC Biology Past paper. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're a new subscriber, we welcome you. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Let us begin. Item 31 refers to the following diagram of a potato plant. So which part of the plant contains the most starch? So looking at the plant, we can see that I is the leaf, 2 is the stem, 3 is the potato, the food source, and then IV is the root. So the only part here that has a lot of starch is definitely going to be the food, which is 3. So please remember that potato plants, they store their food in their roots. Question 32. Item 32 refers to the following diagram of a mammalian kidney, nephron. So which of the following correctly identifies the functions of each of the labeled parts I, 2, and 3? This is also a repeated question. So we know that I is the Bowman's capsule, and that deals with ultrafiltration. 2 is the proximal convoluted tubule, and that deals with selective reabsorption. And then 3 is the loop of Henle, and that deals with water conservation. So the best option here would have been B. Question 33. Locomotion is important to animals for, so we have I, avoiding predators, 2, reproduction, 3, assimilation. So now we're talking about locomotion. So remember, locomotion is the movement of an organism from one place to the next, or from point A to point B. It's different from movement because movement is not necessarily moving from one place to the next, but movement could also be moving a part of the body or the whole entire body. Like you move your arm, that's still movement, but your arm is not moving from one place, to the next. But it's a part of you, a part of an organism that is, moving or displacing some type of movement. So for locomotion, so avoiding predators, that's a good reason to move, to avoid predators. 2, reproduction, which is the same as, finding a mate. You may see that in your textbook. So assimilation, no, that is not a good reason, because assimilation is involved in digestion, is the process by which, food gets digested and incorporated into the body. So it's digested and incorporated into the body. So that has nothing to do with why locomotion is important. So we have I and 2, which is A. 34. The correction order for an effective nervous response is, so we have A, brain, then spinal cord, then effector, then receptor. B, spinal cord, then brain, then receptor, then effector. C, effector, spinal cord, brain, then receptor. Then D, receptor, spinal cord, brain, then effector. So the first thing, whenever we're thinking about like our nervous response, we always have our stimulus, which would have been the change that you're responding to, so the change in the environment. So none of these mention a stimulus. So the next thing we would have to look for is the organ that's going to detect the change, which is normally a receptor. So the only one that starts with a receptor here is D. So from the receptor, then the spinal cord, then it goes to the brain interprets the information, and then it sends back a feedback, and the effector, which is normally a muscle or a gland, would carry out whatever response was sent. 35. The best description of the role of excretion in living organism is to. So we have A, produce urine, B, produces feces, C, get rid of toxic waste, D, get rid of excess water. And please remember that excretion is the removal of metabolic waste, so the best option here would have been C. Question 36. Item 36 refers to the following diagrams illustrating the steps involved in an experiment. So after a few days, the tallest shoot would most likely be, so if we look at it, we have I with a foil cap, 2 with the tip removed, 3 nothing was done to it, and 4 have a transparent cap. So this one is also a repeated question, and the best option is I, because the foil cap will create a dark medium. And remember, the plants have auxin, which is a growth hormone that normally elongates the plants in dark area. 37. Item 37 refers to the following diagram of a reflex arc. So which labeled structure relays the impulse to an effector? So the effector is always going to be the muscle, and right here where my arrow is and we're marking, that's where the muscle is. So the C here is relaying the information to the muscle. A, which is the beginning, would have been the receptor, and then C would have been the nerves that are bringing it to the spinal cord, and then this would have been the effector. Rather, C here would have been the effector, D would have been the nerves bringing it to the spinal cord. Item 38 refers to the following diagram, which shows movement in plants and animals as seen in a bird and a vine. So as we can see on the picture, we have the birds and the vine. So 38, which of the following statements about movement in a bird and movement in a vine is true? So we have A, both the bird and the vine move parts of their body. I would say this one is true. B, the bird and the vine move because of stimulus. No, so B is out of it. C, the bird moves its entire body while the plant does not move. We all know by now that plants display movement, which is either growth movement or part movement. And then animals would display whole body movement or part movement. So C is out of it also. Then D, the entire body of the birds move while a part of the plant moves. So this one could also be the answer. So let us look at A and D. So A, both the bird and the vine move parts of their body. That is true. And then D, the entire body of the bird moves while a part of the plant moves. So to me, the best option here would have been D, even though both of them can display part movement. If you look at the diagram, you're seeing different variations in which the birds are moving. So that would indicate that the entire body of the bird is moving. And once the bird is flying, you know that they're moving from one place to another, locomoting. So D would have been the best option. Question 39. Which of the following best describe the term stimulus and response? So remember, stimulus is any change in an organism's environment, while a response is how you react to that change. So the best option here would have been D, with a stimulus being a detectable change in an organism's environment, and then a response an organism's reaction to a stimulus. So question 40. Which of the following factors does not contribute to glaucoma in the eye? So we have A, vitamin A deficiency, B, heredity, C, stroke, and D, age. So the first thing is we have to understand what glaucoma is. So glaucoma is caused by an increase in pressure within the eye due to blockage in the flow of the aqueous humor. So glaucoma can give you, symptoms like pain, inflame, or tender eye. So it would be painful eye, inflamed eye, or tender eye. And for a person to treat it now, you can either use, eye drops, oral medication, which is going to reduce the pressure because, the aqueous humor has built up, or drainage, which would have been, doing a surgery to drain the fluid buildup. So now, which one is going to be the least likely to cause glaucoma? So we have vitamin A deficiency. So with vitamin A deficiency, it is more a preferred choice of treatment if we were talking about night blindness. But we're not talking about night blindness here. The heredity, so glaucoma can definitely be inherited from generation. So it can be passed down from either your parents to you, your grandparents. So it is inherited. So that's true. Stroke could definitely cause glaucoma as well as your age. So the persons who are, much older, they're more at risk of getting glaucoma than a person who is younger. So the best option here that is not really a contributing factor is vitamin A. But doing some research, you may find that it can, but it's like a slim chances of it directly contributing to, glaucoma happening in the eye. But all of these options, B, C, and D, they definitely are strong contributors to glaucoma in the eye. So 41. The function of the choroid layer in the eye is 2. So this is also a repeated one. So we have A, focus most light rays. B, prevent internal reflection. C, maintain the shape of the eyeball. D, control the amount of light entering the eye. And definitely prevent internal reflection. So 42. The following statements describe the processes taking place within a seed during germination. So we have I, embryo uses food to develop radicle and plumule. 2, enzymes break down proteins into amino acids. 3, soluble products move into the embryo. So we're trying to find the order. So which of the following correctly identifies the sequence of events during germination of the seed? So thinking about germination, so the first thing that would happen would have been 2, enzymes break down proteins into amino acids. So C and D are the only options that have 2. And then the next thing that would happen is the soluble products move into the embryo. And then we would have the embryo using the food to develop the radicle and the plumule, which is the root and the shoot. So the best option is definitely D. 43. Items 43 refers to the following diagram, which illustrates a measurement of growth in living organism. So now, which of the following labels would be incorrect on the y-axis? So we all know that this side is the y-axis and this side is the x-axis. So we have A, mass, B, length, C, units of time, D, number of leaves. So the best option here is units of time. Units of time is always on the x-axis. Items 44 refers to the following diagrams of 2 specialized cells. So as we can see, we have the ova or the egg cell, and then we have the sperm cell. So 44, which of the following structure is common to both? So we have A, which is the cilium. So the cilium is only on the egg cell, so that's not common to both. Then B, we have the nucleus. So we have a nucleus here in the egg, and then a nucleus here in the sperm. Okay. And then C, we have the flagellum. The flagellum is only common to the sperm cell, as we can see here. And then we have the acrosome, which is at the top. The acrosome is only common to the sperm cell, and the acrosome is gonna contain some enzyme that is gonna dissolve a passage into the ovule. So that's the function. So the best option here would have been the nucleus, because we can see that they're in both of the diagram. 45. Which of the following table correctly states the cause, treatment, control, and prevention of the disease AIDS? So this is also a repeated question. So now, for HIV and AIDS, it is caused by an RNA virus, and then this RNA virus can be treated by antiretrovirals, and we control it by just having one partner, so no multiple partner things. So it's just one partner. And then another way to prevent it is by abstaining. So if you're not having sex, then guess what? You cannot catch HIV. And if you're not having unprotected sex, so the best option here would have been A, because A, it's an RNA virus. It's not a DNA virus. It's not a bacterium. It's a virus. And then the treatment is definitely antiretrovirals. And the control is monogamy, which is basically, having one partner. And then the prevention is abstinence. Also repeated one. 46, which of the following forms of birth control is likely to be most effective? So we have A, condom, B, diaphragm, C, tubal ligation, D, birth control pill. So the most effective is definitely tubal ligation. And 47. Which of the following is the correct sequence for a seed formation after fertilization? So we have A, ovule to zygote, then to embryo, then the seed. B, ovule to embryo, then seed, then the zygote. C, embryo to ovule, then the zygote, then the seed. And then D, embryo to zygote to ovule, then the seed. So for the most part, we know we should end with the seed. So everything except B ends with the seed. The next thing that we should know is that we have to start with the ovule. So everybody else would have been out of it because A is the only one that starts with the ovule. So it's from the ovule to the zygote, then the embryo to the seed. Question 48. A vector is defined as an organism that A, bites human, B, causes disease, C, lives on other organism, D, transmit disease-carrying organism. So the best option for a vector is an organism that is going to transmit a disease-causing organism. So now we have 49. Production of new organism from one parent only is known as A, sexual reproduction, B, sexual reproduction, C, mitosis, D, meiosis. So the best option is A, asexual reproduction. Question 50. One example of a sex-linked disease is, so we have A, cancer, B, hypertension, C, color blindness, and D, Down syndrome. So we all know that cancer is definitely not a sex-linked disease, but cancer can be hereditary. Then B, hypertension is also not a sex-linked disease. It is really a physiological disease. And then C, color blindness, this is definitely the sex-linked disease. So this disease is normally prominent in males, or a lot of males will have color blindness. So they'll carry the gene to have color blindness. So hence it is sex-linked. So it's on their sex chromosome. And then for Down syndrome, you may be thinking that Down syndrome has to be on the chromosome because it affects the chromosome. But what happens in Down syndrome is just that the 21st chromosome have an extra copy of itself. So it's not sex-linked because that is not the sex chromosome. So this is out of it. I don't know why I was making a circle. So the answer is C, because color blindness is the only illness or disease here that is sex-linked. So moving on to 51. So 51 is a little bit blurry, so just bear with me. So if you watch part 1, you would have known that, the papers are not so clear. So 51. Items 51 refers to the following diagrams, which shows the stages of mitosis. So this is something that we would have known. So the correct order for the stages is, so we're thinking about mitosis, which is replication of the cells in the body, except the sex cells, because that would have been meiosis. So let us look at it. So in I, we can see that the chromatids, they're moving towards the opposite poles. So the chromosomes, they're moving towards the opposite poles. Then in 2, we can see that they're at the equator, at the center. And then for 3, we realize that they're in the center, inside the nucleolus, and they're not together. So they're just chromatids. And then for IV, we realize that we have 2 different cells. So if we want to put them in the correct order now, the first thing we'll start with is definitely 3, because this would have represented interphase. So 3 is representing interphase, so now we're between B and C, because A would have been out of it. A doesn't start with 3, D would have been out of it, D doesn't start with 3. And another trick to this is you have to know that IV here would have to be at the end, because this is telophase. So IV here, so both of them, B and C, that are starting with 3, they also end with IV. So now it can be a little tricky. So now we have to figure out if I is gonna come first or 2 is gonna come first. When I say first, I mean after the 3. So the next thing we have to know is that if you know mitosis, the chromosomes, they have to align themselves at the equator. So 2 would have been the next thing after 3, because guess what? The chromosomes, they have to align themselves. And then we would know that I would have been the next thing, then IV. So the best option here would have been C. So just to quickly identify the phases, so we're saying that 3 is interphase because the chromatids are small. We already know that IV is telophase because we have the 2 daughter cells that we're expecting to get. And then when they're aligning themselves at the equator, this is metaphase. And then IV, when they're moving to opposite pole, we call that anaphase. So moving on to 52. On a certain Caribbean island where sugarcane is grown, a fungus is accidentally introduced into the island and destroys the entire crop of sugarcane. Which of the following best describes this occurrence? So we have A, the plants were old and therefore more susceptible to fungus. B, the plants were not of a hardy enough variety to withstand the fungus. C, the plants were planted too close together so the fungus spread easily. D, there was no genetic variation among plants, so none could have survived the attack. So this is a repeated question, so the best option would have been D. So 53 and 4 is a little bit blurry, so bear with me. So which of the following is not a characteristic of meiosis? So this is also a repeated question. So A, maintenance of the diploid number. B, genetic recombination of alleles. C, crossing over of chromosomes. And D, random assortment of genes. So like I said, it is a repeated question, so the best option is A. And we already explained what all of these terms mean in our previous video, so I'll suggest you just go ahead and watch the video. I'm not sure if it's the 2017 or the 16, but it is there. 54. Albinism is caused by a recessive allele. 2 normal parents produce an albino child. This is because, so I'm trying to do my best to zoom it so you can get a better view of this question. So albinism is caused by a recessive allele. So we all know to be recessive, you have to be 2 common letters. So I'm just going to use A. And it goes well with albinism because it starts with A. So AA, that means it's recessive, right? Two normal parents produce an albino child. So we already know that normal could be dominant, which is having 2 capital, or heterozygous, which is having 1 capital and a common. And this is how the parent could have produced an albino child, by being heterozygous. Trying to make my ticky, but the pen had other plans. So now we have A, both parents were homozygous recessive. No, that's not true, because this is homozygous recessive. And if both parents were homozygous recessive, they could not be normal. They would have been albino. Then B, both parents were heterozygous for the gene. This looks okay, because we know that they have to be heterozygous. And then C, one parent was homozygous dominant, which would have been this, capital A. And then the other is heterozygous, which would have been this, capital A, common A. But to get an albino child, both parents have to be heterozygous. So you can also do the cross to prove it. Then D, one parent was homozygous dominant, which would have been AA for the trait, and the other homozygous recessive. So we would have gotten the heterozygous, so that's not true. We wouldn't end up with an albino child. So the best option here would have been B. So 55, variation in a population is due to, so we have I, mutation, 2, crossing over, 3, asexual reproduction. So because we're talking about variation, which is basically a difference, asexual reproduction would have been out of it, because asexual reproduction is a clone. They are genetically identical. So it's everything except 3. 56. Towards heterozygous for fast growth rate are crossed, what percentage of the entire F1 population would be expected to possess the homozygous allele? So just quickly do a Punnett square. So now they're telling us that the goats are heterozygous. So guess what? We can use but the same heterozygous allele that we were using from before, the same capital A, common A scenario for both of them. So capital A, common A. Same thing, capital A, common A. And then we'll just cross. Okay, capital A times capital A, we know we got 2 capital A's. Same thing here, capital A times common A, capital A, common A. Then capital A here times common A, capital A, common A. And common A times common A, we have 2 common A, 2 common A. So the question now, what percentage of the entire F1 population would be expected to possess homozygous allele? So to be homozygous, you have to have the 2 same letters. So it's either you're going to have capital A, or common A, right? And that means you're homozygous. So we have 2 homozygous allele here. So we have this one, capital A, and then this one here, common A. So because we have 2 and it's 4, so remember from before, everybody's 25 here, 25 here, 25 here, 25 here. And we only have 2, so it's 25 plus 25, which is 50. So 50% of them would be homozygous. So let me just circle the 50. 57. A man with blood group A married a woman with blood group C. They produced 2 children with blood group AB. The alleles A and B are described as being So if they produce two children with blood group AB, so the allele is described as being A homozygous, B codominant, C recessive, D dominant. So it'll be codominant because both A and B are residing together. Question 58. Which of the following is true about natural and artificial selection? So for natural selection, we have occurs in domestic population. For artificial, occurs in natural population. So that's not true. And then B, involves genetic modification, largely controlled by the environment. For artificial, that is not true. And in C, produces organism well suited to the environment. And for artificial, produces very different organism from natural population. So that is definitely true. And D, just to make sure, faster process, natural selection is not a faster process. So that's not true. 59. A group of closely related organisms that are able to interbreed and produce fertile offspring is called a species. So we have A, niche, B, species, C, population, D, communities, definitely species. So 60, which of the following terms refers to visible characteristics of living things? So we have A, gene, B, genotype, C, phenotype, and D, chromosome. So the best option would have definitely been the phenotype, which is the physical characteristics of living things, whatever you can see, whether it's the eye color, the hair color, the skin color, you can see it. So it's physical, it's there. So once again, guys, we're at the end of another CXC revision session. I'm your host, Ms. Bayakem. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm wishing you guys good luck on your exam.